Hi, this is Mr. Hutchings with Mr. Hutchings History. Today is a follow-up podcast to Unit 3.3, Empire's Belief Systems, and I'm focusing on the Babylonian Captivity from 1309 to 1377. In Unit 3.3, I mentioned the Babylonian Captivity of the papacy without explaining it. It is an important bridge between medieval Christianity and the religious upheavals of the early modern world. Understanding it will help make sense of the Reformation, rising state power, and the changing relationship between belief and governance. So, what was the Babylonian captivity? The phrase refers to 1309 to 1377, when the popes left Rome and ruled from Avignon, a city in southern France. Rome had been the pope's home for centuries. It was the center of the papal states, which the pope ruled as a sovereign territory. Leaving Rome meant leaving both symbolically in spirit and definitely leaving as a political authority. Critics compared the Avignon period to the ancient exile of the Israelites in Babylon. They believed the papacy was not spiritually independent and had fallen under the control of the French crown. To understand why medieval Europeans called the Avignon period the Babylonian captivity, it helps to know the original reference. Biblically and historically, the Israelites were not originally from Jerusalem. Their early ancestors lived in the broader land of Canaan, and in the biblical story, they trace their roots back to families who came from Mesopotamia. Over time, the Israelites developed as a distinct community in the hill country of Canaan. Jerusalem became their central city later. Around 1000 BCE, Israelite King David made Jerusalem the political capital, and his son Solomon built the first Jewish temple there. From that point onward, Jerusalem became the heart of Israelite religion and identity. In the 6th century BCE, the ancient Israelites were conquered by the Babylonian Empire. In 586 BCE, King Nebuchadnezzar II destroyed Jerusalem and the first Jewish temple, and many of the city's leaders were forced into exile into Babylon. These deportees were taken hundreds of kilometers along established caravan routes into Mesopotamia. The exile lasted until 538 BC, an exile of nearly 50 years, when Cyrus the Great of Persia captured Babylon and allowed the Israelites to return home. So when ancient sources and later medieval writers refer to the Babylon exile as being taken from home, the home they mean is Jerusalem and its temple-centered religious life. For medieval writers, this story symbolized a community removed from its spiritual center and placed under foreign influence. So when the popes ruled from Avignon between 1309 and 1377, critics compared it to that ancient exile. They believed the papacy had been taken away from Rome, its traditional holy center, and placed under the political influence of the French crown. The analogy was powerful, and the name Babylonian Captivity became a widely used critique of the papacy's loss of independence and prestige. So why did the papacy leave Rome? 3 pressures drove this move. First, the rising power of kings. In the early 1300s, European monarchs, especially Philip IV of France, wanted more control over taxes and church appointments. When Pope Boniface VIII resisted, he clashed with Philip. After Boniface's death, French influence grew heavy in papal elections. Secondly, instability in Rome. Violence between noble families made Rome unsafe. The city could not guarantee the Pope's security or independence. And thirdly, French political pressure. Pope Clement V, a Frenchman, chose to stay in Avignon in 1309. He built a stable court there, but one overshadowed by French interests. This is why so many Europeans felt the papacy had been captured, not physically, but politically. So what happened during the Avignon Papacy? Well, one, a more centralized bureaucracy emerged. The Avignon Papal Court became efficient and well organized, but that organization required money, and the papacy increased taxes and fees. Many Christians saw this as corruption. These financial practices later became central criticisms during the Reformation, especially the sale of indulgences. 2. The loss of global credibility. The Pope was supposed to represent all of Latin Christendom, but in Avignon, the papacy appeared too French. English, German, and Italian leaders began questioning the neutrality of the papacy. 3. There was a weakening of the Papal States. By staying away from Rome, the Pope weakened his own political base in Italy. Local lords filled the vacuum, reducing papal prestige. Fourth, there were the seeds of the Great Schism. When the papacy returned to Rome in 1377, disagreements about who should be pope split the church. From 1378 to 1417, Europe saw 2, then 3 rival popes. This Great Western Schism, a disagreement of who should succeed as pope, shattered the idea of a unified Christian authority. So why does the Babylonian captivity matter for Unit 3.3? It damaged trust in the church. The papacy looked less spiritual and more political. Reformers argued that the church had drifted from its mission. This decline in moral authority prepared the ground for Wycliffe, Huss, Zwingli, and eventually Luther. It taught monarchs how to control religion. This is the key AP connection. Watching France influence the papacy showed kings across Europe that religious authority could be shaped or pressured by the state. Students should connect this directly to later events. Henry VIII taking control of the English church. German princes choosing Lutheranism to increase independence. The Peace of Augsburg of 1555, allowing rulers to choose the religion of their territory. Peter the Great, absorbing the Russian Orthodox Church into the state. Safavid enforcement of Shia identity to strengthen central power. Akbar's toleration as a strategy for ruling a diverse empire. Understanding Avignon makes these later decisions clearer. It sets up the crisis that made reform urgent. Having multiple popes during the Great Schism proved that the church could be divided, political, and unstable. This pushed many Christians to demand structural reform long before Luther. It fits our unit's skill focus. Causation. The Avignon Papacy contributed to the weakening of church authority. Continuity. Religion remained central to political legitimacy. Change. States gained power over religious institutions. We can have a useful comparison for global context. We see also this pattern outside of Europe. In the early Ottoman and Safavid periods, rulers shaped religious leadership to support state stability. This echoes the way French influence shaped the Avignon Papacy. Across empires, political leaders understood that controlling or guiding religious authority could reinforce their own power. So let me offer an AP-style takeaway. Here's a one-sentence summary of the Babylon captivity you can memorize. The Babylonian captivity showed that the church could be influenced by kings, weakening papal authority and helping trigger the reform movements of the early modern period. That's it for now, but stay tuned to the Mr. Hutchings History channel for the next lecture.